it before, but I'll say it again. Joel was not wrong to save Ellie at the end of The Last of Us Part 1 or Season 1. I'm kind of surprised we're even having this conversation again, but since we are, I'll say I am surprised that we continue to have this conversation with such a lack of nuance and an intense moral rigidity that doesn't really account for any of the factors of this story. I know it's become really popular to attach a very staunch moral stance to every media take you have, but I think that that's missing the point of the game, and I think it's also ignoring the very important context of what's going on here. I think no matter which way you look at it, Joel's decision is in every way less morally reprehensible than that of the Fireflies, which they're seen to be ignoring even basic concepts of human rights like consent, bodily autonomy, the Hippocratic oath that all doctors take to do no harm, which yes, sometimes mean doing things you don't agree with. And their ideologies, like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, ignoring logistics of how like that actually practically would be enacted, are ideologies that lead, it's a slippery slope that leads to things like eugenics and other really bad things. I believe in this stance so strongly that I'm not even going to get into the fantasy where the Fireflies are able to, for the first time in history, create a vaccine for a fungal infection because one surgeon who has no background in epidemiology or the studying of fungi or the development of vaccines is able to, on his first try, develop and distribute a vaccine that somehow helps everyone around the world, which even if they were able to do that, and this assumption is assuming that they can, it's not going to erase the literal millions of human and infected monsters that now inhabit the world as society has fallen, that we see in the games. But let's pretend that that doctor, that single surgeon, would be able to do something historically unprecedented scientifically, and also that it would be egalitarianly distributed miraculously around the world to everyone who possibly needed it. I still think that Joel was right to save Ellie. I think that it ignores everything that it stands for to be a human, for the Fireflies to say that Ellie's life means nothing because hypothetically she could save many, many other lives by dying. I mean, just to throw a single other example out there, when you watch the movie Cabin in the Woods, do you root against the people in the cabin? Do you think that the corporate Monsters R Us ritual enablers are the good guys? Because technically they're habitually saving humanity by murdering a bunch of random people. Sorry, they gotta die in order to save people. Do you think that at the end of the movie, those two survivors should have just laid down and been like, well, this is, we've got to do it for the good of the world? Do you think that in ancient societies, if they could have actually proved that murdering teenage virgins would make their crops prosper, it would make sure that there was no famine, that less people died of disease and hunger, do you think that that justifies the killing of these children? I certainly don't. And that's not even getting into the fact that as a parent, if it were me personally, I absolutely would have done the exact same thing that Joel did if I had the ability to. And frankly, I feel like I would probably want to do it for anyone that I love, because I believe that human life is inherently valuable and that it's not a fair thing to ask of anyone, let alone the consent issues that go along with, oh, well, Ellie would have wanted it that way. Yeah, Ellie was a traumatized teenager, a child who had been conditioned her entire life to believe that her life was valueless. So of course she would have said, when presented the opportunity, this is the most meaningful my life can be, is if I kill myself so that maybe other people can have a better shot at a life in this hellscape that we all live right now, regardless of whether a vaccine exists or not. Furthermore, I think it's disingenuous to suggest that that is the moral question at the heart of The Last of Us, is was Joel right for doing this or not? I don't think it was. I think that honestly, this choice is really the setup for the core conflict of The Last of Us, which is the parallel between Abby and Ellie and the cycles of violence that happen when you're unable to let that shit go. And the fact that they both saw their lives as expendable because they were so deeply unhappy because so much had been taken from them. In a lot of cases, through no fault of anyone else's. They both got dealt a really shitty hand. They were both born into this horrifyingly unfair, cruel, vicious, violent world that even people like Joel notwithstanding is incredibly cruel and takes things from people at random. I think the two of them learning to appreciate life and let go of their anger and let go of their resentment and try to appreciate life for what it is the entire point, which in my opinion furthers, supports the idea that what Joel did was entirely morally justified because he finally found love and was fighting to keep it. It's not the rational choice to save Ellie in that moment, but love isn't rational. Humanity shouldn't be a calculation of what makes the most sense on a fucking spreadsheet. Anyways, suffice it to say, I disagree with people who think that Joel was in the wrong, and honestly, I think it's fine if you think that, if you think that people should sacrifice people. But what I don't agree with is this framing that people who think that Joel was not morally wrong are somehow morally deficient or bad people for believing that, because it's just an entirely different moral ideology. And if you really buy into the idea that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, okay, I wish you luck on that journey. That is, again, a very slippery slope. A lot of ideologies in this world are, but I simply can't subscribe to that. I think that human life is precious, and I think that the idea that murdering a child in order to hypothetically improve the lives of other people is just simply never really justifiable at face value.